talk about boundaries, what a boundary is, why we place boundaries, and how to place a boundary. A boundary is a clear expression of what allows you to stay in integrity while you're in relationship with others. You want to stay in your authentic expression with yourself when you are with other people and in relationship with them. So two things can exist at the same time. You can exist exactly as you are while maintaining friendships, connections, and all that requires is boundaries. We often place boundaries from really three places is the ground that I like to go to. We place boundaries from a place of hurt. Wow, what you did or said hurt. And so now I'm going to place this boundary. Or we place boundaries from a past trigger. Wow, I've seen this behavior before. I've felt this thing before. So I'm placing a boundary with this person in front of me. And then the third place that we place boundaries from is a place of sacredness. So this is where we, these three, and I see them almost as a land or a type of dirt, and each dirt has a slightly different consistency. I don't know why I see it as dirt, but I kind of do. Maybe boundaries, yards, hills, I don't know, landlines. But in one of these, we're feeling hurt. In another one, we can logically know that we deserve better, even if we don't always feel that or resonate with that, because sometimes we're still working on our own authenticity. We're still working on our own feelings of deserving. We're still working on how we should be treated, especially if we're used to being treated poorly in the past, or if we were raised being treated poorly in our families. But we can get to a point where we logically know this isn't correct behavior. This isn't how we're supposed to act. We also can place boundaries from that space of defending honor, the recognition that something is sacred. I recognize that this is a sacred place, that I'm a sacred soul, that I'm a sacred person, that who I'm defending or what I'm defending is of a sacred or holy nature. And then we can do it from a space of pure sacredness, where we just have such a deep understanding of our own inherent worth and value, and that what we're doing or bringing to a certain situation is of pure ritualistic sacredness, that if someone steps on it, it's not even a logical thought of, they shouldn't do that. It's an automatic response within your body. Whoa, that is not allowed. You are stepping on sacredness right now. And these are places where we can place boundaries. I want to talk for a second first about why we place boundaries, because none of these are bad places to place boundaries from. Placing a boundary from a past trigger is not any better or worse than placing a boundary from a space of sacredness and recognizing sacredness. We can recognize the sacredness of a soul, of a human, of civil rights, human rights, and that's actually not much better or worse than placing it from a trigger. But there is a difference in the side effect internally, and that's what I want to draw our attention to. When we place a boundary from a space of hurt or a past trigger, these are good. When someone places a boundary, it tells you a lot about that person. It tells you the things that they've been through in the past, the things that they've experienced, something about their fears even. And that's not bad, because that's part of their karmic journey. Maybe they didn't just wake up or be born with this feeling of knowing how wonderful and how worthy and how sacred they are. Maybe this has been part of their journey of recognizing the things that were done to them that they don't deserve, or the things that have happened in their life, they're starting to recognize, I don't want this anymore. And that's a good enough reason to place a boundary. Just knowing I don't want my life to look like this anymore, or I don't want to feel like this anymore, or this reminds me of someone else's behavior in the past that hurt me. That's an okay reason to place a boundary. You don't need another reason to place a boundary. Underneath that, though, what I want you to look out for is your connection. Are you still allowing connection? Sometimes when we place boundaries from spaces of hurt or past triggers, we can be placing boundaries around wounds and placing boundaries around soft spaces inside of us to defend our hurt. And so maybe this is why I'm seeing it as land, because we're putting up fences, we're putting up walls. And when we build those walls, sometimes we end up sitting back in life, looking around and saying, I feel kind of isolated. I feel very disconnected. I don't feel like I have connections or respectful friends or a closeness. I don't feel like I'm part of a group or part of a pack. And darling, that's probably because you had to place a lot of boundaries, but sometimes those boundaries are keeping you as walled in as it's keeping other people walled out. What you don't want to do is tear those walls down and let those same people back in. What you do want to do is allow your heart space to be open so that when you meet new people or have new experiences, or sometimes when the old people change, and that can happen. People can grow, right? People can heal and they can grow. Inherently, their personality is always going to be the same. Remember that. But people do grow. And when people are new experiences, new people, new growth, your heart gets to lead, not your triggers. Your heart gets to be open to that connection. And then when you recognize something that is a red flag, that's when you get to believe what you're seeing and place the boundary. Keep in mind what a boundary is. It is your clear expression of what keeps you in integrity with yourself, not controlling somebody else, while remaining in relationship with others. That doesn't mean that we have to completely cut people off as soon as they throw a little red flag or say something they shouldn't say, although sometimes you need to, especially if they're narcissists or abusive. Put up that wall. I mean it. Put up that wall to them. But on the other hand, a boundary is actually something completely different. A boundary is not cutting someone out of your life. That's a different thing entirely. A boundary is making sure there are integritous rules in place in your relationships that you are maintaining, in the relationships that you are using moving forward, that you are sustaining yourself into. Because all people have inherent value and worth. And some of them you really love and care about. Some of them you know belong in your life. But that doesn't mean from time to time they won't say something that to you feels unintegritous. And that's okay for you to say and place a boundary of, I don't want you to talk like that around me. I don't want to have this conversation with you. I don't want to do the thing that you're asking me to do. And that's it. That's a good enough reason. So it is good to place boundaries if you are noticing a past trigger, if there's something inside of you that's saying, I recognize this pattern, or what that person did hurt me. That's a good enough reason. And make sure that you are still allowing connection, because that's what this is. It's about relationship. And if you're completely cutting people off and putting up those walls, that's not a boundary. That's cutting people off. And it's okay to cut people off, but we're specifically talking about boundaries with continued relationship. So in this space, we don't want to isolate ourselves. We just want it to be known. We have to use your voice, okay? There's probably a lot of relationships that you cut off in the past because of your past hurt or because of your past triggers, that if you had simply communicated your own value, your own needs, your own desires, that relationship probably could have continued in a different way. But we want this for you now. We want now for your relationships to continue in a way that feels good to you. And then there's the sacredness, where you recognize that something is sacred, that something is beautiful, that something is holy, and somebody is stepping on that. And when you recognize that there is a downside to this too, and placing boundaries around those things, you want to allow humanness, because everyone is a human. Everybody makes mistakes. Sometimes they just don't know. They weren't inherently aware of the sacredness that they're stepping on, or maybe they were raised differently and no one's ever shown them anything else. And you get to place boundaries in those relationships to teach them something different, to teach them what feels sacred and holy and right to you, while at the same time allowing them to be humans. Because we, in no way, shape, or form, want to become controlling in our relationships or want everything to be one-sided. We want people to still be who they authentically are. We want people to show up open, to show up who they are without feeling like they're stepping on toes or walking on eggshells. We need to allow humans to be human. We need to allow things to slide, to be okay. And by slide, I do not mean bad things or negative things. So with the sacredness, this may be where we're calling out anything that could be below the surface, such as sexist or racist or just ingrained in culture, that maybe we're not always thinking about, but it does step on human rights or civil rights or, the rights of certain groups of people. And this is recognizing sacredness. Or maybe if you're a teacher or a facilitator and you are running a workshop or a ceremony or a ritual, and people do things that you're stepping on your sacredness. Maybe they're oozing negativity. Maybe they're throwing trash into your sacred fire. These are things to place boundaries around. And then also allow them to be human. Let them do the little dance that they want to do. Let them scream and yell or cry. Let them be in charge of themselves to show up if they're going to show up and want to show up, and don't show up if they don't want to show up. This is allowing them their autonomy, their sovereignty, their humanness, while also keeping your space sacred and integritous the way that you want it to be. So on one hand, if you are that type of person, that teacher or facilitator, and sacredness is the reason you place boundaries, that's good. That is a spirit warrior. And allow people to be human. Nobody is perfect. You can have the conversations and then give love. If you're doing it from a place of hurt and a past trigger, that's a good enough reason to place a boundary. But don't wall yourself out and isolate yourself. Allow that connection to happen. All of connection happens from the heart space. And so when our heart is open, only does voice flow through. Because your voice is where you actually place boundaries. You don't place boundaries with your heart. If you are, what you're actually doing is putting up walls and not communicating and cutting people off, which is something different entirely. We established that. If you are trying to continue relationship and your heart is open, that allows the energy to flow up through the heart and into your voice. And then you speak. Remember, the definition of a boundary is clear expression of what allows you to stay in integrity with yourself while in relationship with others. So the throat. But if your heart is blocked and closed and guarded, the energy never makes it up to your throat space for you to express. So you might have difficulty defending yourself. You might have difficulty expressing your authenticity. You might have difficulty talking about your needs or your wants or your desires or your feelings. And if that is the case, if your throat is blocked and you can't express these things, check your heart. See where your energy is becoming blocked. Am I defending myself so much here that I can't speak it here? Or maybe it's lower. Do I not feel safe enough to even open my heart space to then speak what I need to speak? You have to allow flow. In one of our last lab groups, that's Life's Anonymous Battles. That's a free emotional support group that is run by our partner, Erin, once a month. So go to our website, click that link, and you can join that Google Meet anytime you want to. But in that, one of our last groups, the song, I think it's by Usher, came up, Let It Burn. And it was just in my head on repeat. And then I realized that somebody else had also recently had that song playing in their heads for them. And it's because there was a lot about femininity coming up that particular month, and the sacred feminine and the healed masculine and the healed feminine coming together. And there was this fire that I saw in vision raging through me, but not even in an angry way. There was not a lot of anger or rage or anything associated with it. It was just a fire. Like fire purifies. It was purifying ground. It was purifying people. It was purifying what needed to be purified in order to be kept sacred. And I noticed that it was stuck at the heart in my vision. And the reason it was stuck at the heart in my vision was because I was trying to logically understand why I felt the fire. I was trying to put a label on it. I was trying to figure out where it came from, what I was supposed to do with it. And by the time I logicked that inner fire, it became stuck. Just like in quantum physics, if you observe something, it becomes in a fixed state, which is why we only observe things the way we observe them in its fixed state. But that fire was in that fixed state. It was unmoving. And as soon as I let go of that, when I let go of the why or the how or what to do with it or what it means, it just burned through. And I allowed it to burn, and it burned what it needed to burn. It purified what it needed to purify, and there was no negative emotion. There was no anger or rage or hurt. It was just a burn. But then I noticed water coming in, running parallel to it. And it was held in a beautiful, balanced container. Fire and water. The fire purifying what needed to be purified, the water holding the openness of spirit. And they were moving together. Boundaries are important. We've established that boundaries are about authenticity versus control. Because when we place a boundary, we don't want to be isolating ourselves or controlling other people. We just want to be in our authentic flow while being in relationship with others. And something came up in my mind, and this I actually learned from a man, and I learned it from a male psychiatrist or counselor. I don't know what he was, but he had his own practice, so possibly a psychiatrist. He said the words, "Let them sit in the discomfort." And I resisted that at first because my feminine nature, my nurture nature is like, no. Plus I'm a Cancer rising. So you guys who know me well know that if I place a boundary, I'm always like later, maybe not to your face, but to myself, I'm like, was I too harsh? Was that okay to do? Are their feelings hurt right now? He said, let them sit in the discomfort. If you have to place a boundary, you can do it kindly. You can say it very plainly because it is a clear expression of what allows you to stay integritous while in relationship. But you can't rescue the other person from the boundary you just placed. If you rescue the other person from the boundary you just placed, you are undoing your own boundary. So this is the opposite of isolation. This is just rescuing them. This is saying, go sit on the other side of the fence. Okay, but I'm going to come sit there with you. What good does that do? None. No, zero good. It does zero good because it's not consistent. It's not allowing someone to sit and internalize and reflect as to what needs to change. We don't want to torture people, but at the same time, don't rescue people from the things that you have put into place. Let them sit in the discomfort of that. Because I promise, when you let that happen, everything will start to turn around. It will. And I had a sign this morning, a synchronicity, if you will. So this is just an example, right? There's something that I want, and this is a personal story. There's something that I want, another dog. And my husband's saying no, right? He's placing his boundary because this is a shared space and he doesn't want another dog. But I have my own reasons, and I'm the one here all day because I work from home. So he placed a boundary this morning, and then I placed another boundary back by singing, you think you own whatever land you land on, because this is my land too. And I get to have things too, right? So we were kind of in that boundary with each other space. But then he walked out of the front door and quickly called me out. And I walked out too, and there was a hare in the neighbor's yard, a brown rabbit with the big ears. And I've never seen a rabbit here before. So we were like so excited looking at this rabbit, and it was hopping, and it was just so cute. And all of a sudden, it just felt like the sky opened up. It felt like the clouds moved a little bit, the sun was rising, a light breeze was blowing. It just felt magical all of a sudden. And he said the words, "It's all turned around. The morning has completely turned around." And we both felt it inside of ourselves. We don't necessarily know what that means long term. Like, I'm probably going to get a dog. But we don't know what that means long term. But for right now, we both clearly expressed what allows us to sit in our authentic selves while remaining in relationship with each other. And a sign immediately came that says, everything's been turned around. Everything is okay. The sun is up. So I want to invite you to invite Hare Medicine into your practice just for today or the next week or the next month, whatever floats your beautiful boat. And I looked up Hare Medicine for you. Now, Hare Medicine, if you look this up in Dr. Farmer's book, it really kind of talks about relationships and trust and signs. It says to move quickly, remain flexible, beware of deception. We want to be aware of when we need to place boundaries or when someone is stepping on our boundaries. And it says we want to pay attention to those obvious signs and not to fool ourselves, because sometimes we do that too, especially if we're the type of person who we don't always recognize the signs at first, because we are the type of people who just automatically see a person's potential and who they could be and how they are sometimes. Just because somebody's nice sometimes and has the potential to be really cool sometimes doesn't mean that they're not a complete dick the rest of the times. And that's the red flag. That's the part where you say, this person is inconsistent in how they treat me, and I'm going to place a boundary here. And if they can't respect my boundary, then I'm going to go a step further and they will be cut out of my life, because those two aren't the same thing. Hare Medicine also tells us to pay attention to cycles, because there will be cycles where we're very active with output and cycles where we're very receptive. It says there may be unexpected changes as well. It all turned around. But that's what I really want you to hold to with Hare Medicine, is that it allows things to turn around and to turn around quickly, especially when you're speaking your authentic truth and placing the boundaries that you need to place. But how are you when other people place boundaries with you? Whoa! People place boundaries on me? Because that's a true test of your character and your authenticity and your integrity, my darling, is how do you act when people place boundaries with you? Because I'm sure you're a great person as well. I'm sure you're lovely and wonderful. But then people have to place boundaries with you too. People place boundaries with me. That's your true active character, is how do you act or react, if you're reactive, when someone tries to place a boundary with you. So when we are boundaried, I immediately try to shift into a space of honoring the other person. If you don't understand the boundary at first and you want a conversation, that's great. But you should try to immediately honor that they're trying to place a boundary, that they are recognizing or feeling something that they don't feel safe with. And remember that your things, when you place boundaries, are the same reasons why other people place boundaries. Maybe they felt hurt by something you did or said. Maybe something you did or said triggered something from their past. Maybe they're seeing something as sacred and you're not aware of it. So maybe a conversation does need to happen. So when someone places a boundary with you, I think the first thing you should do is just honor that boundary. Before you need to know why, before you have the conversation, just honor that. Okay, take that step back. The second thing is see their point of view. Try to understand why they placed that boundary. This might be part of the conversation. Try to understand what in their past triggered them by your actions, or why what you said or did hurt them, even if it wasn't your intention. Because we never set out with ill intentions. Well, most of the time we don't set out with ill intentions. We don't usually leave the house with the intention to go hurt somebody's feelings. But when that happens, or when someone feels uncomfortable, it doesn't even have to get to the space of hurt. If someone feels uncomfortable by something, it's okay to recognize that and adjust to it. We want to see their point of view. The third thing is to check your motives and your intentions. We don't always consciously realize what our motives are because we don't always live intentionally. We want to try to live intentionally, but sometimes we just get up and we go about our day. So sometimes it takes a bit of introspection to realize what our true motives were in any particular situation. If I did or said this thing, was my motive to vent? Was my motive to connect? Was my motive to receive energy and attention? What was my motive in doing the thing that I did? Because then I can understand what part of that bothered them, or why am I acting the way that I'm acting that bothered them. Now, this is where we get back to that authenticity versus control piece. Because if you're one of those people who, when someone places a boundary, you're like, oh, I have to be authentic. I have to be my true self. Girlfriend, nowhere in their boundary did they say you have to completely change who they are. What they're asking is for you to recognize what they hold as integritous and then honor that in their presence. That's how you maintain a relationship. And I've read from this book before. I want to do it once more. The Pivot Year by Brianna. One of my darling clients sent this to me, and I love him to death. Don't die, though. On day 85, I'm going to read what this says. Your authenticity is not your stream of consciousness. It is not doing whatever you want, whenever you want, without any regard or consideration for the ripple effect it might cause or for where it may lead. Honey, your authenticity has nothing to do with your spur of the moment, inklings, thoughts, urges, desires. What you do consistently comes to be characteristic of you. Not what you think, feel, or even fear, but what you choose. If you display sincere kindness, even if you feel the hardness of judgment first wash over your awareness, you will come to be known as kind. If you display resiliency, strength, and courage, even when you're facing the deepest unknowns, resilience will come to be associated with you too. You are in some ways fixed, but in others adaptable, mendable, shiftable. You are not the culmination of what you once were. You can defy the past. You can become what you decide to be. What I want you to understand about your authenticity, darling, is that it is changeable. What makes you authentic is that you are stepping out of your triggered states and into your openness, into your flow, into who you were before you were wounded. Because that feeling of control isn't coming from your authentic space, it's coming from your wounds. That feeling of negativity or rejection or any negative feeling that you have isn't coming from your true authentic self. Your true authentic self has no negativity. It is a pure soul. Those reactions and feelings are coming from your wounded ego self. Now, even if you feel that wounded ego self first, when someone places a boundary, how you choose to act in that moment becomes part of your authentic self. Because even if I feel rejected, or even if I feel a little offended by someone placing a boundary on something I've done or said, because I know I didn't mean it in a mean way, if I choose to honor their boundary, to honor who they are, to honor that they felt unsafe in that moment because of their own stuff, then part of my authentic personality becomes honor. I want to be honorable. I choose to be honorable. I choose that. I choose to have respect. I choose to hold things sacred and defend sacredness, even if that means I need to be aware of myself and my actions and my thoughts and my words around someone else because I'm stepping on their sacredness, and their sacredness deserves just as much respect as mine. That is authenticity. That is authenticity. A boundary that somebody else places has nothing to do with you. A boundary that someone else places has 1000% to do with them. What makes them feel safe, what makes them feel like they can be in a heart open space around you, what makes them feel taken care of, loved. Their boundaries are about them. And so if you love them and want to continue in relationship with them, you get to honor and respect those boundaries. I feel like we've had so much growth today. Just so much. We've grown so much. We've sprouted all of our little seeds, and we're just really growing and letting the Hare rabbit run through our gardens. I'm going to give you an acronym for how to place boundaries now. And it is the word KIND, K-I-N-D. Okay? So KIND, just write K-I-N-D as an acronym for how to place boundaries. For the K, I wanted to say, keep it simple. Remember that placing a boundary is a clear expression of what you need. So keep it simple. You don't have to over-explain. You don't have to complicate it with your past reasons or anything like that. Just say exactly what you need to say. Keep it simple. With the I, integrity first. Understand what's going on in your body. State it kindly to the other person, and recognize when they are being integritous back and when they're not. Because this is going to show you a red flag or it's going to show you a green flag. And you're going to know whether you're safe with them in the future or whether you're not. Red flag, green light, red light. Integrity first. Because remember, you need to know whether you're reacting from a triggered space or from the recognition of something sacred inside of you, of your inherent worth. Both are worthy of placing a boundary, but one might show you where maybe you're disconnecting yourself from others, and one might show you where you're not allowing humanness. Place your boundary, be integritous inside of yourself. N. The N in KIND stands for no over-explaining. Do not over-explain. You don't have to. Because if you feel pushed to over-explain, it's because they're trying to figure out a way to go over or around or loophole through your boundary. It's okay to have a conversation, okay? Especially in a friendship or an ongoing relationship. You want to have conversations. They might apologize when you place a boundary, or they might want to understand you better. So that they can change, so that they can get the other point of view. So conversations are good. And if you place a boundary and they keep coming at it, it's like, well, why? Why this? Why that? Well, what about this? What if this? If they're forcing you to over-explain, they're looking for a loophole. And that does not need to happen. The more you over-explain, the more you're allowing that boundary to back down. You're softening your own boundaries through over-explanation and overthinking. A clear, expressive boundary does not need over-explaining. Another good example, someone I know and love who's very close to me was trying to sell me something, and I said, "No, thank you." And they said, "But why?" and gave me all the reasons why this would be a very clear, good investment. And I decided I was not going to talk to them anymore. Not like forever, but I was just not going to engage in that conversation anymore. So I never messaged back. Because I don't need to. I said no. I don't need to over-explain that no. Because the more I say why I said no, the more that person's going to find reasons why my no does not matter in this situation. And my no does matter in all of the situations because the answer was no. D, do what you said. Do what you said. This is about consistency, holding your boundary. Meaning once that boundary is held, if that thing happens again, this is not where you get to be like, oh, here we go again, and then just completely ignore it, or chalk that up to someone's personality, and this is just what you have to endure in order to be in relationship with them. No, you get to be consistent. Saying something one time, if it keeps happening, you're going to have to say it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. You don't get to rescue them from your own boundary. And you get to enforce your boundary. You know, I told you before, no. I told you before, I don't like this behavior. I told you before, don't say those things to me. And if you consistently hold that boundary, they're going to be forced to either stop doing the thing you're telling them to do, or you're going to have to take that step after boundaries and just cut it off. But this is a clear disrespect to your boundary to have to keep repeating yourself. Now, sometimes this is honest mistake. This is something that somebody's used to doing, or something that they're used to saying, or a way they're used to acting, and nobody else calls them on it. So maybe it's an honest mistake, but they're not going to get away with it in your presence. And your consistency is what creates the boundary. You have to consistently build the little chain link fence. You know, this is something that we think about a lot with like children or even pet training. If we say, no, you can't have cookies before dinner, but then some days we let them have cookies before dinner, that's an inconsistency in a rule that makes it not a rule. Because now they know, well, sometimes mom will let me have cookies before dinner, so I'm going to ask whenever I want. And it's not their fault. It's yours. If you hold inconsistent boundaries and people cross them, that's your fault. I'm not a victim shamer in any way, shape, or form. And you're no longer a victim if you don't hold consistent boundaries or if you rescue people from the boundaries you've placed. That doesn't make you the victim of someone's behavior. That makes you the perpetrator of their behavior. It makes you the person who is allowing their behavior, not protecting yourself from their behavior. You are perpetuating their behavior by not placing your boundary consistently. That's a tough pill to swallow Because sometimes when things happen, especially if they're happening over and over and over again, we have to sit back and say, what is it that I'm doing, or how is it that I'm being that lets them think they can act this way to me or say these things to me? A lot of the time, especially if it's just a one-off thing, one-time thing, that's not our fault. No victim shaming, because people are audacious, right? They will say or do like crazy things. And then we get to place a boundary and consistently uphold that boundary. If it keeps happening and we haven't cut the person off and it keeps happening and happening and happening, that's our fault, right? That's on us. So be kind. Keep it simple. Integrity first. No over-explaining. Do what you said you were gonna do. This, my darling, is how you place boundaries, what boundaries are, and defines who you authentically are when others place boundaries with you. I'm Mary Colozzo. Welcome home.